So let me know if there's anything, like if I sit forward, is that gonna, am I still gonna be in the, how close focus do you have?
If you sit forward, it'll be okay. Yeah.
Okay. I tend to like to move around.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I'll duck around and we can play with that. I'm not. Okay. So here we are. So actually I'll do the classic first sound. Okay. So I'd love to hear what is the rewilding? Starting with that simple question of what your work, the rewilding, and if you can talk about that.
I would love to talk about that. I think essentially the rewilding is two things. It is an acknowledgement and validation for what is true about our lives, particularly in developed Western culture here now on the planet. And also, in addition to validation and acknowledgement, it is then an invitation. So, and it started as an invitation rather than a dogma. I say that all of that because it's not a 7 steps to, it's not a program, it's not a paradigm, a modality or anything academic. It's literally a call. It is so to take those 2 steps and separate them and just go through them quickly. The first part of the rewilding, the acknowledgement and the validation, so hugely important for us living lives that can often feel just at the very least dualistic, where at any given moment in our day we can be feeling literally insane for what is happening in the internal landscape of our bodies and our body minds, and our mind, our brain. That it is an acknowledgement and a validation that primarily what happens for us as humans in this culture is a domestication process, and a process of actually pulling us out of what is most true about ourselves, depressing, co-opting what is most true about us in service of something that ultimately does not serve us, that does not serve our purpose, or some people might say our highest good, or others might say even our reason for being here. So an acknowledgement and a validation that we are born into a way of being that ultimately does not have our best interests or even our interests at heart. And asked over the course of our lives through an acculturation process to become someone who serves this other thing. And after having said all that, and there's this great, oh my God, you mean that's why I feel this way, that's why I've forgotten how to love, that's why I can't maintain my erection, maybe that's why I yell at my children, maybe that's why I hate what I'm doing because I'm not doing what I love. And so after there's this permission to actually investigate the truth of many of our lives, then there's the invitation of the rewilding, which is to say, so given that, what's possible? Given that, what if we shift the landscape so that the primary conversation you're having with the world isn't the one that has you cathecting or serving this other that does not serve us? What if then our conversation turns then back to the more than human world, the world from which we've come, the world to which we very clearly belong, and of course the world to which we'll return. So what the invitation then to ask, what then is possible here? And so that's all very sort of ethereal in some ways, what the rewilding is, but essentially that's what it is. There are no 7 steps. So far, there are not 7 steps haven't made themselves apparent. So it's an acknowledgement, a validation, and an invitation.
I've been suggested to not to just nod and not say
Absolutely.
I
know it is so hard. That's been my teaching.
It is. Yeah. So just want to speak that.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me
turn this.
You could move that anywhere. Yeah.
So one of the things that I'm hearing, and are you okay? We're going off script. Great.
This is yours, so you take it.
Nice. So something that I'm hearing is a sense of reciprocity. Like the word reciprocity really came up, and us as humans serving this one other that doesn't serve us. So there's a lack of reciprocity when instead we can actually turn and serve the world, or the world, and that seems to create an actual sense of reciprocity.
Well, and yes, within reciprocity is this question of what is the nature of the relationship that we're having. So the nature of a wild relationship is one that ultimately serves life, that serves the continuation of and the thriving of life. And a one way, we've gotten very good in our culture of creating, or very good at creating these one-way relationships, these unidirection, singularly focused sort of really deadly relationships. So the reciprocity, I think, comes in vibrantly when we turn and ask ourselves or invite ourselves to re-engage with our fullness, with our wild selves. We are stepping back into relationship. And that ultimately is the real goal of the rewilding, is to help guide people, humans, back into our primary relationship with self, with other, and with the more than human world. And it's ultimately this relationship that is what is really primarily fulfilling and rewarding for us. It is really the heart of what it is we all long for and in fact need.
And so if relationship is what we need, if we look at what's happening right now in our culture, when you said, I'm not recalling exactly the words you spoke, but the unidirectional relationship, where there is not reciprocity, and the thought of porn came up.
Of porn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a beautiful example. I'm not sure where you're going to go with it, but no matter where you go, it's a beautiful example. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you could speak to where are we currently with, and it seems like with particularly in relation to relationship and sexuality, it seems like where we are right now, there's a there is not a reciprocity. And what the rewilding wants to do is to bring back the relationship. So where are we currently in our society? If you can paint a picture, like what's...
Yeah, that's sort of the mother lode. So let's see if we can kind of pull it, you know, reverently apart, so that we don't lose too much of the important details. Really, where we have, you know, in my experience, where we have come in our living is a process of being out of relationship with all things, with all beings, with all things, including ourselves. And the culture has created itself, and we've supported the culture to do so, such that we have developed into a species that believes that those things we most want, the things we most need, are worth the sacrifice. And perhaps we've actually even forgotten what we're sacrificing. That's actually likely very true, that we've forgotten and have become, in some cases, terrified of the very thing we most desperately want and long for. So where we've come, I'm going to kind of probably circle around this a little bit because that's such a big question. So if you you know, if you want to guide along the way, then feel free. So it's just absolutely no surprise that our human expressions like sexuality, this thing we call sexuality, which is so much more vast than what we've defined as sexuality. If we say, for the sake of this conversation, that sexuality is actually, that what we define it as in this culture, which is, you know, intercourse, which is flirting, which is that, you know, the titillating energy, the kind of the woo and the draw and the, it's all about you. If I feel it in relation to you, it's all about you, and I want to get something from it. This thing that we've decided to call sexuality and put in a small box and tuck in the back corner of a bedroom closet. For the sake of this conversation, I'm going to blow that wide open, and I'm going to say that when I talk about sexuality, I'm talking about literally the generative capacity of the universe, and our capacity to feel a sliver of of the volume of that. That is what our sexuality is. It's an opportunity not only to procreate, which is, you know, how we all got here, how everything got here, including the enslaved matter all around us, but the living, breathing animals like Coda, you, me. So for the sake of this conversation, and for the sake of, and in the world of rewilding, sexuality is not just, wouldn't it be nice if you could have mind-blowing orgasms all night long with your lover, or all sorts of different women and men all the time. It's literally our capacity to be in a monastic experience with this energy that is nothing less than the generative capacity of the universe. So, where we've come with that is that we've forgotten it all. Is that we have slowly but surely truncated and co-opted it down to the thing that helps us get to bed at night, or the thing that helps us relieve stress. You talked about porn. The thing that helps us get our fix of, you know, the chemical cocktail, the dopamine and the oxytocin, the whatever happens for us that is that physiological quick flash in the pan, whew, wow, I feel better, you know, whatever helps us have a sense, an externally drawn sense of our own worth and our own identity. That's what sexuality has become. And from where I sit, it's at the peril of all life on the planet at this point. You know, all life depends on us remembering what is possible. And so therefore the cultivation of our full sexuality, which is so vastly larger than fucking, than making love, than tantric breathing with a partner, than any of that. Literally all life depends on it.
I was noticing when you were speaking, I touched into grief.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What's the connection, you think?
Well, first of all, I'm right there with you. So much of the rewilding, and I'm going to be right there with you right now, so much of the rewilding is a process of grieving what we have lost at the expense of this, at the in this campaign to get where we are right now. So much has been lost. We don't even rightly know. I mean, we're counting species extinction, we're looking at the degradation of the rainforest, we're, you know, people come in here by the droves and talk about the loss of their capacity to feel, just to feel, not to feel ecstasy. We're just talking feel, I'm here. And the culpability of that is extraordinary. The culpability of that is extraordinary. What has been possible, and the egregiousness that has been made possible because of this forgetting is so profound that it feels fairly clear to me that one of the primary responsibilities of the human species at this point is to remember how to grieve, and to do it in a primary way, to do it in an everyday, every moment of the day way. Now, having said that, it's not possible to grieve without, Martin Prechtel talks about this so beautifully in his talk called Grief and Praise. It's not possible to feel grief without feeling love and feeling joy and feeling gratitude. The true grief there's no fuel for it unless all those other things are also present. So part of the rewilding, again, to come back to that, is literally a kind of an exercising of all of the emotional capacities that we have as humans, which are vast and extraordinary. And literally, if this is all we did with our time, if we spent all our time grieving, like falling to our knees and grieving, and then in that next moment, because this is the way it goes, laughing or orgasming or just feeling stunned into silence by the beauty of a thing, then we would be absolutely wild. All of us would be living in our wildness. And possibly we might be fulfilling our primary purpose here as human beings, using our most extraordinary endowments for exactly what they were made for, which is to be this glorious, conscious reflection of this miracle that is around us.
So what does it mean to be a human being?
Well, for some reason, I feel the urge to say that, well, obviously my answer is going to be so personal. And I didn't feel called to say that before, having said any of the other things I've said, but for some reason, I'm just going to slip into the Christiane Pelnis's sort of 101 from my own intimate experience. And my experience being human has always been one of reverent witness. And the older I got, and the more conscious and aware, and I went through academic training and got words to describe my experience, I only became more convinced that our primary purpose here as human beings is to be that reflective, that awed, conscious, reflective capacity for the magnificence that is happening all around us, to be deeply impacted by it, deeply, which brings us back to grief, to allow ourselves to be absolutely just mortally undone by the fact of losing someone. It's a daily fact. It's happening right now. Millions are dying. Just millions of beings are dying as we sit here and have this conversation. It's so perfunctory. It happens. Millions are being born. And it's impossible for us, if we're really going to tell the truth, it's impossible for us to actually make sense of that. It's only possible for us to respond, to have our response to it, to grieve. And so the grieving becomes this, it just feels like one of the primary things that define us as human beings. Our ability to feel the loss of something magnificent. Whether it's the sun going down. How do I know it's going to come back? It's the end of a glorious day. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Whether it's the grief of that, or the grief of losing a loved one, or a parent, or a child, or a tree. How there's the capacity to feel that grief is one thing that really, in my experience, defines us as human beings.
Would it be accurate to say that the road back to humanness, fullness,
Mm-hmm.
and the road back to sexuality, mm-hmm. authentic sexuality, is to feel our grief?
Absolutely. It's absolutely essential, and it's one of the core processes, the core invitations of the rewilding, is to let it rip. And in fact, one of the practices that has really become very profound in the rewilding process, and for some reason particularly this is true for women, in our lovemaking, and it's in our lovemaking with self as well as other, regardless of our orientation, that for some reason it tends to be true that a rewilded female expression of sexuality includes grief. And it is not, at first when I was starting out witnessing couples and guiding couples in their lovemaking, I was shocked to see, and at first dismayed, wondered, what is wrong here? When I saw the amount of grief that would come through a woman very organically as she found the really large capacity of her ecstatic states, and the altered state of consciousness that is orgasm, that can be orgasm. 9 times out of 10, women would start their first emotional expression within an orgasm would be sobbing, and which has been true as I have rewilded. It has become true of my experience with my sexuality, and so I'm not sure why that's true for women, and more so than men, because I don't see it in men. Men slide in with the right invitation and permission as the one who will become the bedrock, as the woman allows herself to be taken over by this grief. But it has become a core process, to the point where if there's really any teaching that goes on, anything I rely on is something that I, as a tried and true step in the rewilding process. It is that I encourage women in their lovemaking, in their particularly that first portal of the first orgasm, to allow, is there any grief there? Is there any? I know it sounds odd. We're not taught this. You're supposed to be having this mind-blowing, ooh-ah experience. So is there any truth here in this experience for you that is grief? And so I don't even question it at this point. With that one bit of permission, women will just let it go. And it will last such a short period of time, because what comes washing in right on the heels of that is its beautiful kind of tantric polarity, which is the fullness of life and the fullness of the celebration of life and the joy and the surrender. But somehow there is something very profound about entering into the joy through the portal of grief. And it really does define us as human beings. So yes, the road back to rewilding, the road to our rewilded selves, it is one of the very first acknowledgments is that there is grieving that has to happen, not just because of where we are in our time here, not just because there is such sadness occurring, there's such tragedy occurring on the planet, but because it's tragic to be human. It's just beautifully tragic to be human. We're going to lose everything in our lifetimes. And it's just true. And the fact of the largeness of that speaks to our ability to be grateful, to have the profound gratitude for what it means to be human, for all of this. So yes, grief. Mm-hmm.
So this very last thing you spoke to, that being human also means accepting loss. Mm-hmm. Brought to mind the connection between the pulse between life and death, mm-hmm. and how those intermingle with sexuality.
You're asking the most phenomenal questions, Fabio. They are. In the medicine wheel, the rewilding medicine wheel that I offer to couples and to individuals, because it's true for us as we cultivate our solo sexual experience, which is a very, very important practice to have. The acknowledgement of this, really what I've come to know of in my work as the primary partnership, the first partnership, the first partnership that took place on the planet in order to make possible all of this, is this partnership of life and death. And as much as it is paramount in our rewilding process to make ourselves available to the grief that is true, that is simply true in our experience, there really is an equally important process of making ourselves conscious and reverent and protective of this life-death relationship. We have, in this culture, of course, vilified death. We have decided that it's a thing to conquer. It's become an enemy. Despite the fact that it's the one immutable fact of life is that we're going to die and everything's going to go. Several times over in a lifetime we're going to die. We have vilified it. We have exiled it. And as much as it becomes more difficult to talk about with sort of with our English words, it really seems that so much that is happening, transpiring on the planet now, is a result of death out of relationship, is a result of an exiled death. We have, in some ways, created a monster in death, when it's simply one half of this thing, this life-death partnership that makes us possible. So bringing back into our awareness this reverential, protective capacity that needs to be cultivated around this partnership of life and death is essential as well in the rewilding. And in our lovemaking, we have such a capacity, such a potential to let that play out to our benefit. So as we're making love, really stepping into it with so we're making love with another human, we have the capacity to, in our push-pull of our lovemaking with our partner, we have the capacity to cultivate an entire life cycle in one experience that allows us to feel the dying away of an old idea, the dying away of a way of being. Orgasm is such a portal into a surrender that some people talk about as losing the sense of our physical body and joining something vast like the universe or the Milky Way. And that's a death right there. It's a death. We like to call it an ego death. It's a death of the identity of me as Christiane here in this body. So our lovemaking has such a powerful capacity to allow us to visit on a regular, practiced basis what it means to be embedded irrevocably. We can't do anything about it. Embedded in this beautiful cycle of life and death over and over again.
Can you talk about orgasm and the potential that is in orgasm? You also earlier talked about orgasm as an altered state of consciousness. Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
Well, quite literally, it is chemically, we can truncate it down to a split-second experience that literally just allows us to feel a relief of stress in our bodies. But even that's an altered state of consciousness. We're altering our consciousness with the chemicals that we don't have any control over. With an ounce of consciousness, just an ounce of, no lifetime dedicated to special breathing and cultivating the chakras and any of that business. With an ounce of attention and consciousness, we can cultivate an orgasm into something that allows us to have an experience that is outside of ourselves, which of course is what we want. I mean, for me, I'll just talk personally about my experience, and it's why I'm doing this work, that from the very, very young age, orgasm for me, before I knew that there was a thing called an orgasm, it was just something I learned how to do in my body at the age of 8, was a way to lose my human sense of, here I am in this body and I have a finite capacity and a finite ability to relate and hear and understand what's happening with the world. I realized that orgasm could actually, with the proper care and attention, could actually allow me to lose my sense of identity and my sense of limitation and hear things and really know things in the gnosis sense, not in the kind of I learned it or I believe it, but in the I don't even question it because it's absolutely part of me now. To know things about the larger process of what's happening with the world, with the more than human world. So orgasm is a way to move outside of, to step through and into something that is a landscape in which there really is no longer any viable sense of me. There's a me enough for me to be having a conscious experience, for me to be able to be saying, I'm feeling a sense of vastness, But the I can almost take on the experience of the I being as large as the universe. Women will constantly, again, with really an ounce of invitation, women will constantly talk about having just come through an orgasmic experience, feeling like they know what it means to be the Milky Way. They know what it must have felt like when the universe was creating itself. So, and we want this. We humans want, and in fact must have, experiences like this to remember our true name and our true place, and our true capacity as stewards and reflectors of, again, of just the magnificence that's happening around us all the time. We've got to find a way, more so now than ever, to have regular experiences moving outside of our mundane experience.
How then can, talking about you mentioned women and the glimpse of largeness they can be experienced, that they can experience, that women can experience during an orgasm. How does that, you think, how does that relate to a possible human rite of passage? And I'll rephrase that. So how can sexuality and the possibility of orgasm be a rite of passage into something greater?
Well, at the risk of kind of sliding into the hyperbolic, it is every time we cultivate orgasm in this way,